and my son runs to the bed and jumps on the bed and hides under the blanket. And I said to him, like, buddy, oh my, like, what happened? What's going on? And he's like, he bit me.
Hello and welcome again to the DeadUntilDuskParanormal Podcast. My name is Connor, and tonight we have Julie, and she has a story that involves her family, more specifically her son, and it started around May of 2019, and we'll get to the end of this story, and I think it tapers off at the end of August of 2020. But Julie, you contacted me in the summer of 2019, right?
Yes. Yep.
Right. So through another friend, a mutual friend of ours, you contacted me and told me that something was affecting your son, to be specific. First and foremost, Julie, thank you so much for being here. I hope everything is well, considering.
Thank you for hearing my story.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, let's just start at the beginning, and I just want you to tell your story. Just say it how it happened, and then we'll discuss it as it goes.
Okay. So it all started in May of 2019. At the time, my son was 2, and it was me, him, and my boyfriend. My boyfriend was staying the night, and we were getting ready to head upstairs, put him to bed. And as my son turned the corner to head up the steps, he asked me, he said, "Mom, where are they going?" And I just looked at him and I was like, "Who, buddy?" And he's like, "The neighbors." And we lived in like a 3-house row home. We were in the middle. So I thought maybe he was referring to, the neighbors next door because we were friends with them. And I told him, I was like, buddy, they're probably at home or they're at work. It's late. Let's just go up to go to bed. And he started arguing with me that, "No, Mom, not those neighbors. The guy's right there." So at this point, I looked at my boyfriend and I looked at my son and I'm like, okay. So I said to my son, I said, "Well, come on, buddy, let's go upstairs. Tell me who you're talking about. What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
So we go upstairs, and upstairs was a little hallway. It goes into my bedroom, and then off to the right was his bedroom. So we went, he took me into my bedroom, and in my bedroom, there is a huge, walk-in type closet that had 3 heavy wooden sliding doors. And he said, he's like, "The men, they're in there, the neighbors." And so I opened the closet door and I'm trying to explain to him, there's no one in there. There's nobody else in the house. And he just kept insisting and insisting and insisting that there were 2 men that lived in my bedroom closet. So we started, I'm not new to paranormal. I believe in it. I've experienced things often when I was little. So I started asking him questions and questioning him. He just started to tell me, there's 2 men that live in the bedroom closet. They come out sometimes and they play with him. And we just share the house with them. And at the time, a couple weeks prior, he would go upstairs and he would hang out in my bedroom by himself. I'd hear him up there playing like peekaboo and singing little songs, but I didn't really think anything of it. I mean, he's 2, crazy, imaginative, didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
So when he started telling me all of this, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my God, maybe this all kind of goes together. So my boyfriend, being the overprotective, doesn't really believe in the paranormal much type guy.
Mm-hmm.
He opens the closet door and, he's saying, "Buddy, there's nobody in here, blah, blah, blah." And my son's still arguing. So my boyfriend picks him up and he's like, "Okay, I want you to point where you see these two guys right now. Can you show me in the closet where they are?
Yeah.
So he picks my son up, puts him up higher, and my son points in the right-hand top corner of the closet. And as he puts his hand up, he rips it back, starts screaming and like flailing. My boyfriend puts him down, and my son runs to the bed and jumps on the bed and hides under the blanket. And I said to him, like, buddy, oh my, like, what happened? What's going on? And he's like, he bit me.
Yeah.
So I look at his hand, and lo and behold, there's a bite mark on it.
Really?
So at this point, I was like, okay. So there definitely, it's not just his imagination. There's something here.
Now,
So,
when you say there's a bite mark, was it like big, like normal size adult teeth, or like small teeth?
Yep, it looked like it would have been like near my boyfriend that just opened our mouth, bit him real quick, just long enough to leave a red ring and the teeth indentations, and that was it.
Ooh, I bet you were freaking out, right?
Oh, I was.
I mean,
was losing it. So I quick, I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, it's not just his imagination.
Now, I just have to ask, so you're watching this happen, right? You're watching him point, right? And then he freaks out because he was bitten. At no point you didn't, there was no break away from seeing him. You saw him the whole time, from pointing to saying he got bitten and then checking his hand, right?
Yep, there was nothing, nothing happened.
Do you have any photos? Do you have photos of this?
I do.
Okay.
I do. There was like a split second between him raising his hand to point it up into the right-hand corner and screaming, putting it down, flailing out of my boyfriend's arms, and darting onto the bed. So there was no possibility of him doing it or pinching it or anything.
Or your boyfriend anybody doing it.
Yeah, it was clear as day. His hand was fine. He put it up in that corner. Then it wasn't.
Yeah, that's something that's, how do you fake that? Unless, and he didn't already have a bite mark on him before this whole thing. I mean, that's like, oh boy.
Yeah, there was just no denying it at that point.
Okay.
So I started calling everyone
and that by itself is what the bleep, What?
It was a total what the F moment, basically.
Sha.
What is happening? So, started calling everybody I can think of, reaching out to people. As the weeks went by, nothing huge like that had happened again. But we did, from the night he told us about the neighbors, we would hear footsteps throughout the whole house, specifically his bedroom because it had hardwood flooring. We would hear knocking on the walls. We would close the bedroom because at this point I knew that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
So he would sleep in bed with me, and I would close the bedroom door. At night, it would be quiet as can be, and as the night would go on, you'd start to hear footsteps in the hallway in his bedroom.
Yeah.
And then you would hear knocking on my bedroom door. And the part that always scared me the most was in between my hallway and my bedroom. My bedroom was carpeted, but just as you stepped into the bedroom through the doorway, there was, I guess, a loose floorboard or something like that, and it would creak when you would step on it a certain way.
Okay.
And after you would hear the knocking for a couple minutes, the knocking would stop, and you would hear nothing, but within a couple seconds, you would hear that floorboard creak. As if whatever was knocking on the door had now made its way into the bedroom and was coming into the bedroom. So finally I had gotten in touch. My mother was friends with somebody who ran a paranormal team.
Okay. Yeah.
We had them come in. They did a whole investigation, and they caught a couple images on film. They caught knocking coming from my attic and stuff like that. They had caught a lot of stuff up in my attic. So they assured me, it's just, they felt it was one of the previous owners of the home. Nothing that would intentionally harm you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So they came in, they did a blessing, and that was it. A couple weeks after that, things started happening again, more and more, but it wasn't ever really anything bad. Mm-hmm. It would be things being knocked over or random noises, the footsteps, different smells that we knew right before something was going to happen. We'd always smell the same smells. And so we kind of just got to the point where as long as whatever was in the home wasn't doing anything harmful to us, it can stay. If it was the previous owner, I didn't want him to feel like he had to leave. If that's where he was happy and he was content, so be it. Mm-hmm. We can just coexist within the home and I'll be happy.
Yeah.
So that worked for a couple months. Up until probably April of 2020. And April of 2020, things started getting escalated. My boyfriend was spending more time at my house with me and my son, and it just seemed like that. Whatever was in the home, it didn't like that. Mm-hmm. So more things would happen. We would have, instead of things just falling over, things were now flying off the walls. Or the closet doors that, I had 2 cats. They could never open. My son at the time had a hard time opening the closet doors in the bedroom because they were so heavy. They were older wooden ones. Yeah. They would fly open and fly shut constantly. The attic door it was like a weird type of door handle. It was kind of like a latch that would be on like a fence. Okay. And you would have to almost punch it with a closed fist to get the latch to pop, to open, to go up to the attic.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now the attic door is opening and banging shut at all hours of the night for no reason.
Yeah.
So things started escalating. My son wasn't really saying anything about it. I would ask him once in a while. He wasn't saying anything, so I figured, okay, things are fine. So in June, we started noticing my son, he was constantly angry. He went from an energetic, running around, constantly yelling and screaming, in happiness, 3-year-old, mm-hmm. to he was constantly angry, constantly. He would, if something didn't go his way, if he was playing with a toy and he didn't like the way the toy moved, he would throw it into the wall. If something bothered, if I could even looked at him the wrong way, he punched the wall. It wasn't normal 3-year-old tantrums. It was just pure rage. You would look at him and it was pure rage. So I didn't know if maybe it was just, I don't know, a normal 3-year-old stage, or he stopped taking naps, so I thought maybe it was lack of napping, all different things I thought in my head. Yeah. And until about 4 weeks in, it was just progressively getting worse and worse and worse. And he was in his bedroom one day, and I was walking, he was on his bed playing we got a new cat back in the previous October, who was attached to him. They were inseparable. Anywhere that he went, the cat followed. And every time he would go into his bedroom... I think you told me about
this cat thing. I think you told me about this, yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of remember this,
Every time he would go into the bedroom, the cat would go with him, and she wouldn't leave his side. If he laid on his bed, she laid almost like just full on him. Her tail would be at the tip of his toes, and her paws would go all the way up to his chin.
Yeah.
Like just full body length covering him. So he was in his bedroom playing on his bed with toys, and the cat was there. And I was walking past, I was putting clothes away, heading back downstairs, and I heard the cat meowing.
Mm-hmm.
So I popped my head in. I'm like, hey, buddy, what are you doing? And he just looked at me, and he made, like, a growl noise. And I just stopped, and I thought to myself, I knew it wasn't the cat, but could that possibly have been my child?
Mm.
Because I knew that noise was never going to come from a 3-year-old boy. There was just no way. It wasn't physically possible. It wasn't like a play growling that he would do with, like, my friend's dogs, or it was just an unnatural deep growl.
Mm-hmm.
So after I heard that noise, he just kind of stared at me for a minute, and I looked at him and I said, Grayson. And he looked at me, and he's like, I'm playing, it's fine, I'm playing. And I thought, okay. So I went downstairs. I was thinking about it all day. He was fine the rest of the day. We had dinner. He was good. We went to sleep. The next day was a weekend, so my boyfriend had spent the night. And all day, my son was just crazy. Angry, crazy, not himself. And that night when we went to sit down for dinner, I forget what, he had did something, and I yelled at him. Mm. And he looked at me, and he just gave me this, like, look like, I don't even care, like, go F yourself, basically, is the look my 3-year-old gave me. Mm. And I yelled at him again, and he threw something at me. So my boyfriend intervened, and he said, you know what? He's like, that's it. Go in the corner. You're in timeout. Yeah. So we put him in the corner, and my son was just screaming at the top of his lungs, screaming in the corner. So my boyfriend got back up, went back in, and he yelled at him, and he's like, stop it. You're in timeout. Enough. Mm-hmm. As he turned his back and went to walk away, I heard the growl again. And my boyfriend looked at me and he said, what the hell was that? And I said to him, that's the noise I heard yesterday morning when I was putting the clothes away. I said, that noise that I told you about that I didn't believe came from him, I said, that was it. And the look on my boyfriend's face was just, you can tell he was like, oh my God. So he went back and he's like, what was that? And my son's like, nothing. And his whole demeanor changed. My son's like, nothing. And my boyfriend said to him, he said, what was that noise? And my son just like giggling almost. He's like, nothing. Why? And my boyfriend said to him, he didn't scream it, but he said it like really deep, really intimidating.
Super stern.
He said, I want to know who made that noise. And my son looked him dead in the eyes, posed in the corner, like put one hand on his hip, one hand on the back of his head, and leaned back against the wall. And with this grin and this smirk on his face, just looked at my boyfriend and said, oh, that was me.
Ooh,
It wasn't a voice I had ever heard from my son before. It wasn't a tone I had ever heard him talk in before.
Yeah.
And we just, at that point, we knew, oh my God, this has gotten so much worse than we could have ever imagined. So,
I mean, you just give me the shit. I mean, like, yeah, that's,
yeah, like it got real
quick. Real quick. Yeah. Yeah.
So I called my mom and I started, I'm just crying, uncontrollably crying that there's something wrong with my son. And she had to call her friends back to get them back to come back and investigate, because this obviously wasn't what they thought it was.
Now, what did they think? What did they tell you they thought it was going on?
They told me that it was just one of the previous owners of the home that just didn't feel like leaving. He basically thought that he was still alive, still lived there, and that was it.
Now, at this point, had we been talking? Had you and I been talking at this point?
I believe so.
Okay, because I think I remember from everything you were telling me, I just felt like, yes, it was very attached to your son, and it was super negative and may not be of human origin.
Yeah.
And that was just the feeling of what you were telling me. And I was talking to a medium, and it was a medium that I trusted because they had done a reading on me, not knowing anything about me other than my name and that I existed, and told me things that they just couldn't have known otherwise. And that's the person that I reached out to, and first of all, she told me not to go to your house.
I don't blame her.
I know, and that's why I told you. I was like, listen. And I was urging you, it's like, hey, whenever we talk about this, you should probably not talk about this in the house, you know, because that's what was suggested to me, and I was urged not to go over there. As much as I wanted to go over there, I was told not to, and I really felt that this was something that was attached to you. I mean, very specifically attached to your son, you know. But yeah, continue. I just, because I remember this part of this. I remember this part of the story, what you're talking about. Just want to know if I had been involved at that point, and yeah, I've just been urging you to seek someone who could, spiritual shaman or something. You know, just this. Someone who actually worked with energies, because you probably know by now you can't get rid of the energies. You can
you cannot.
No, you can only maybe hopefully encourage it to move the frick on. Just, I mean, you know, it can only get transferred. But anyway, continue, please.
Okay. Oh my gosh, where was I?
Okay. I know,
so so we had called that original team back in.
Yeah, you called the team back in.
And it worked out because I think it was like 4 or 5 days from the night this happened, we were leaving to go on vacation. So they were going to come out the day we left for vacation and do a whole new investigation. So, and I said to them, I said, that's great. I said, but what am I said, this is obviously attaching itself to my son. I said, there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. I said, what am I supposed to do? And they basically, you know, they said, use prayer, the holy water, everything. And I said, I've been, I'll continue to, but I don't know how much this is going to help at this point. So the next 5 days were the roughest of the entire period. The next morning, we woke up, and it was just probably about 10 minutes after my son had woken up, I noticed he would just stop, completely stop, talking, moving, everything, and he would just stare off. And no matter how much I yelled, shook him, nothing, he would not move. It was like his lights were on, nobody was home. And within a couple minutes, he would come out of it. But we had noticed as the days went on, we caught on that every time that would happen, within a couple minutes, he wouldn't be the same kid he was. he would be whatever was in the house was turning him into. So,
now, would you say that after each, we'll call them episodes, right? When he stops, after each episode, would you say that your so would it be accurate to say that your son would fade more and more, or would it just be he would have the episode, and then there'd be a character shift? Do you understand?
He would have an episode, and within a couple minutes there would be a huge shift.
Okay.
He would come out of it, he'd be out of it for a couple minutes, and then it would be like as soon as he was back with us, completely different person.
Okay. And
so...
just now, would this last like minutes, hours, a day?
This lasted for probably about a week and a half.
Oh, really? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, from his episode, once he came, quote unquote, back to and was different, how long would he be different? Do you know what I'm saying?
It didn't have like a usual. Sometimes it would be 5-10 minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead. And other times it would be a couple hours until he'd be back to himself. It depended. But we had also caught on to, sometimes my son would tell us that he saw a bad ghost in the house after all of this started. And I forgot to mention this, and it's a big key part of it.
Right.
He started telling us that he could see this bad ghost. And other times he would say that he could hear him.
Now, is that really is that like the start of it? Him like expressing that he could see? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So before it really got crazy and the growling, we caught on to when he can see him, he was acting normal. When he can hear him inside of his head, which is how he described it to us, was when my son wasn't normal. It was when he was having outbursts, when he was angry, when he was growling, when he was punching things. That's when he said that he can hear him in his head.
Yeah.
So all of this just continued. The episodes continued. I actually took him to the doctor thinking, because it was like he was having absent seizures.
Wow.
And it was happening about 20 times a day.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if it went hand in hand with what was happening within the home, if it was something happening to him psychologically because of what was happening in the home. I didn't know.
Yeah, and I think earlier on in our talks, I had asked, have you seen a doctor? Had you? Because you have to go through so many things.
We eliminated every possibility, explored every possibility, and nothing was wrong. They did MRIs, nothing is wrong. Neurologically, he's fine. So we dealt with it as best as we could, and we left for vacation. We were gone for a week. Within 2 days of being on vacation, we noticed my son wasn't having a single episode. He was happy. He was sleeping at night. He wasn't seeing things. He wasn't hearing things, nothing. He was his normal 3-year-old self.
Mm-hmm.
So while we were on vacation, the team had called us, and they gave us this whole elaborate story that, honestly, it didn't make any sense to me. Nothing about it added up.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing just seemed right. And basically, I didn't care what the story was. I didn't care if they were right, if they were wrong. I don't care. Just
now, when you say story, they were just like, would they have like a meeting with them? Who was telling them what?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm very skeptical when it comes to mediums because, like, you just never know. I mean, even the person I was talking to, there's always in the back of my mind, I have to say to myself, listen, who really knows, other than the fact that I have trusted before and was quite shaken by the things that she knew, not knowing anything, and that was just based on, on my own trust, and everybody's different, but I'm not going to base my whole investigation on what the medium says. I'll take in accountability. I'll take it into consideration, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, and so you got this story.
And see, that's kind of what they did, and it just, like, everything she had said, it just didn't add up with what was happening, what we were experiencing. So I told them, I don't care what it is, just get rid of it.
Can we do something about it or not?
We can come home to a safe house.
Yeah.
So she had mentioned that, that there were 3 spirits within the home. And she said it was 2 children and the previous owner. They said it was the previous owner again. And which my son had mentioned in the past that he saw a little girl and a little boy, and he would play with them in our home.
Okay.
After speaking to 8 different mediums, it was concluded that my son is a medium. He is like a light to a moth when it comes to spirits, is how they basically summed it up and explained it to me.
Okay.
He's just attracts them. So nothing ever happened. He would just randomly play with them sometimes. So I didn't think that was even relevant to what was happening.
Yeah.
So while we were on vacation, they said that they were going to bless the home again and do everything. And when we came back, we'd be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
So we came home, and as soon as I stepped in the door, it felt a little bit lighter, but you can tell that it wasn't over.
Mm.
So I called them, and they basically just told me, you've been through a lot, see how you feel in a couple days. And I kept insisting, I know my intuition's not usually, when I get a strong gut feeling, it's right.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I've been doing this for over a year. I said, I think I know. They just insisted, it's fine, you're good, don't worry, see what happens in a week. So, okay, we went with that. So we were good for 2 days.
Mm.
We left the house one day to go grocery shopping. We got home from grocery shopping and pulled in the driveway, and my son was asleep. So we figured, he's had a rough couple of weeks. We'll let him nap. So we left the car in the driveway. We were standing right next to it. I was in front of his door. My boyfriend was in front of the front passenger door. We were talking to the neighbor. And about 10 minutes later, I turned around, look, he's still napping. So I'm like, okay, we'll give it some more time, let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking, and about 10 more minutes pass, and I turn around and I look, and he's screaming, frantically screaming and crying. But I couldn't hear him through the car. I always heard, you can always hear him. Cars aren't soundproof.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I could not hear a single scream. I could only see it when I looked at him. So I ripped open the car door, asked him if he was okay. He was all like beside himself, and we took him in, gave him a couple minutes, and I'm like, buddy, what's happening? What's wrong? And he's like, nothing, it's fine. So a couple minutes passed, and I had bought him a new, like, a logging truck set at the store, and he was playing with it, and all of a sudden, he started staring off, grabbed the truck, and threw it across the kitchen.
Really?
And I looked at my boyfriend, I said, that's it. I said, this is not done. I said, I don't care what they said. I said, this is not done. So I called them back frantically. I'm crying. I'm like a wreck.
Yeah.
And they're basically told me that that's not possible. And I said to them, I said, I'm like, this is what my son is telling me.
Yeah.
I said,
It's
after 20 minutes of talking to him and an episode, he told me that when he opened his eyes, the bad ghost was waiting for him in the driveway and let himself in the car. I said, I'm telling you, this is what he said, and you're telling me that I'm making it up?
Yeah.
So they told me to call the head of the paranormal team, and I called him and I explained it. And I'm like, is this even possible? I said, how could this be? You just blessed the home 3 days ago. And he said to me, we blessed the home. He said, it may have been banished from the home, but not the property. He said, so it is possible that happened. And I just remember pausing for a minute thinking, like, what the heck do you mean? Like, there wasn't any fine print that, we blessed the home, but this can still happen.
Yeah,
I just wasn't prepared or expecting that.
Well, unfortunately, that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, I just didn't think of that. I didn't expect that. I just, for whatever reason.
You thought, okay, we have a week. If nothing, we have a week. No, it's not like that.
So,
unfortunately.
I asked him, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And he said, I have things to do. I can come back in 2 weeks. And I said to him, look, I don't have 2 weeks. I said, if this is all starting all over again, I said, I don't have 2 days, let alone 2 weeks. So I started calling it was kind of like he didn't want to come back. He
didn't want to be bothered by it anymore.
Like every answer he gave was kind of like a really generic, like nonchalant answer, almost as if he was like hiding something. Like he knew it was worse than he was telling me, but at the same time either didn't want to deal with it or wasn't sure how.
Oh yeah, because I remember telling you, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, other than trying to talk to, I had like 2 people that I knew could help, if anything. And, one person, I wasn't sure if they'd be involved or not. The other person was the medium, so I felt like I was at least getting a little bit of insight, but the only insight was, don't get involved. and I was trying to tell you, like, this is something serious, but I don't know exactly what to do other than, the basic list. Get the sage. You are a being of light and love. Demand and my cable. Demand and command your presence in your own home. All these things.
Yeah.
But when you say something like your son is a medium, he can see and interact and unknowingly invite. I think we had talked about that before. As things came into light, you were keeping me involved in the loop. And I think I was in New Jersey at one point working during
I think so. I think I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. And I was messaging you, which is scary because that's not something. So if you go on vacation with your son and he comes back home to, I guess the portal, that's his home. He's already started the interaction, I just feel so. I just wish that paranormal group had considered. I don't know. I guess knowledge is power, and we know a lot more now than we did then. But
Well, I said I spent hours on the phone just crying to them. I'm like, it's different than if it was just me. I can handle.
But this is your son. You can't.
Story. You can't. This is a 3-year-old boy who doesn't really know much better. He doesn't realize he can interact with anything, and he doesn't realize the severity of it at times. He's basically helpless, defenseless.
Exactly. And he's fighting a battle that you can't help him win, you know?
Yeah. And they just couldn't be bothered. So I started looking for other options, other teams, and we stayed in the house.
Yeah.
And we basically lived with holy water, prayer, sage, rosaries, everything from the top of the list to the bottom of the list was what we lived 24 hours a day with.
Hey, buddy.
And
sorry, my cat just started yelling.
We actually, I heard him.
Hey, pup.
We actually, that night when that had happened again, it got really bad, worse than it ever was before. And I had started praying over him. And my great-grandmother was a very religious woman. Religion was her power. And when she had passed away, she had a wooden crucifix that inside of it was holy water, a holy candle, and holy oil. And my mom had told me, if something gets so bad, she's like, holy oil is supposed to be stronger. She said, always use that. That's your biggest defense. So when it got extremely bad the one night, I used the holy oil. I did the sign of the cross on him, and I started praying with him. And he just started screaming, profusely screaming, telling me how it hurt. Mommy, my body hurts. Please stop doing that. He started crying. He started telling me everywhere we touched him with the holy oil, it hurt him. And we actually have on video, I think I actually sent you the video of him. We were praying with him, and he was just thrashing his body around. He's screaming, he's crying. You can see on his face that it wasn't even him. And I didn't realize that at the time. I had sent it to my mother, who has a friend who is very religious, and he was looking at it. And I didn't pick up on it until he had mentioned it to me, and I rewatched it. In one part of the video, you can see my son, his body almost goes limp. And his head falls back, and he just has this horrible look on his face. And in the mirror behind us of the bathroom, you can see a shadowy black figure walk across the room.
You're going to have to resend me that video. I'm not sure if you did or not. Yeah.
I still have them all.
Okay, yes. Any videos that you have, send them my way. Again, if you wouldn't mind. Any ones that you feel comfortable with sharing.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I was there. I was the one holding him. My boyfriend was the one recording it. Yeah. I watched it a million times looking for any, and I never noticed it until a couple days later when he had mentioned it. You know, don't you see when that look on your son's face happens, you don't see that in the mirror? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I watched it again, and I was like, oh my God, how did I miss that? So that after all of that, he calmed down a little bit, and I said, you know what, I'm done. Tomorrow we're figuring something out. I don't care if I end up homeless. Tomorrow morning, we're figuring out what to do. I'm done with this. I can't. It's not a battle I'm willing to fight at the risk of my son.
Yeah.
So we went upstairs to go to bed. My boyfriend was staying over, and my son fell asleep, and he woke up. and he was having an episode. And we were trying to talk to him, nothing. Finally, he fell back asleep, and I said to my boyfriend, I said, let's see why that happened. So I woke him up, and it's like 3 a.m., the poor kid. I wake him up at 3 a.m., and I'm like, hey, buddy, do you want a snack? Let's talk about that. And we asked him, we're like, hey, do you remember waking up? And my son's like, oh, yeah. And we're like, well, what was going on? Why were you crying and just staring off?
Yeah.
And my son said, he's like, the bad ghost was here. And where he was staring off was, my boyfriend was like leaning against the bed, off the edge of the bed, and he was staring behind my boyfriend into the corner of the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And we said to him, we're like, well, what was the bad ghost doing? And my son said, trying to take Dude. That's what he calls my boyfriend. And I said, what do you mean trying to take him? And my son said, I don't know. He wanted him gone. He was trying to take him. So that was basically it. I said to my son, I said, can you hear the bad ghost right now? And he said, no, And I said to him, I said, I want you to look around this room. I said, and tell me if you can see him. And he looked, and he stopped staring at the closet, and he looked at me, and I said, what's the matter? And he said, he's there. He's watching us. He's right there. I said, you can see him? He said, yeah. I said, you cannot hear him. He said, no. I looked at my boyfriend. I said, that's it. I said, let's go. And my poor son, he had no shoes on. We were all in pajamas. We left the house and went and stayed at my mother's house for the night. And little by little, the next morning, my son, he seemed pretty decent. He seemed okay. And I didn't know if it was over. I didn't know what we were going. I couldn't just pick up and leave my house. I didn't really know how to go about that.
Yeah.
So I called probably 15 to 20 other paranormal teams. And I led the conversation with, I believe my son is being possessed by something in my home, because I didn't want to hide the severity of it.
Yeah.
So I just led with that until finally I got one team that finally answered my emails and my phone calls.
Yeah.
And they said, we're going on vacation this weekend. They worked with a medium that can do remote things. Yeah. And they were going to involve this medium, have them zone in on the house. When they came back from vacation the following week, they'd give me a call to come in and investigate. Okay. This was a Thursday night. So I said, okay, if I have to stay out of the house until then, that's fine. I'll do what I have to do. Mm-hmm. And that was about noon on Thursday. By 4:00 that same day, they had called me back, told me not to return to the home, mm-hmm. to make sure my son did not return to the home, and they would be there. They were canceling their vacation. They would be there the next day at 6:00. Can I meet them there? So at this point, I was like, well, that can't be a very good sign. They went from being booked for an entire week to 2 to
we'll be
we're
there
canceling
tomorrow.
Everything. We're going to be there the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that makes you think.
We went and we met them, and they brought a man who he didn't identify himself as a medium. He explained it as everybody has a gift. Mm-hmm. Everybody has the ability to have this gift, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. He can hear things. He can see things. He can feel things. Mm-hmm. And he said, I don't like medium. That sounds very cliche. That sounds very just odd to me. He said, I have these abilities and I do what I can with them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I respect that. I respect him saying that, you know.
Yeah, because I
don't like the
thought
term.
he was him, and it was almost like he got offended kind of by it when I referred to him as him.
Well, you know what?
And I felt awful.
I feel the same way about Ghost Hunter. I don't feel that I am trying to hunt ghosts, but we are investigating. I'm a paranormal investigator.
Mm-hmm.
And even that sounds hoity-toity. But yeah, but no, I can understand that. I can understand that completely, and I can also understand him saying that we all have the gift because, you know what, I believe we do. It's just how others are able to tap into it and being able to unlearn
absolutely.
what you have learned and all that jazz. But yes, please continue. You're talking to this man.
So he took my son and they walked around the house. He asked if he can go outside. I said, sure, go ahead, do whatever. The team started asking me like different, very, very vague questions. And they just kind of kept to themselves, walked around. And about 20 minutes later, the man came back and he said, your basement. He said, how do you feel in your basement? I said, well, there's 2 rooms down there. The front room, I said, I feel fine in. I said, I go down there, I do my laundry, I feel fine. I said, but it always feels as if something is peering from me from the back room. I said, I've always felt that way. I bought the house in 2013. From the day I moved in, I always felt that way. And he said, what else, does anything else in this home bother you? And I said, the attic had always bothered me, but I just figured, attics sometimes are just creepy. Unfinished attics are creepy to begin with. I didn't really think much of it. And he started telling me how, my son had told him about the bad ghost who mostly resides in the attic. And that's kind of just, it was like ghost central for my son. This is where my son would see them come and go from.
This was
through his bedroom, of course.
This was the portal.
Where else?
Yeah.
And basically, like, it was just, a come and go for spirits.
Yeah.
And he said he sat down on the couch and he was asking my son different questions. And he's like, so how many? He's like, you see ghosts, you see people in this house that no one else sees, right? And my son's like, yeah. And he said to him, he said, well, how many do you see? And he put his fingers behind his back where my son couldn't see, and he put 4 fingers up. And my son looked at him, he said, how many? He said, there's 4. There's always 4. And he kept questioning my son with which ones he sees and all this stuff. And he basically explained to us that there were 2 men that I don't remember what they were called, but people did refer to them as the neighbors.
Oh.
And those were the original 2 that my son saw.
Okay.
He then explained that there was... Okay, get it. He then explained that there was a woman who was in constant, just crying, constant sorrow and sadness, and all she did was scream at the top of her lungs, why? And then there was one other spirit who was holding all the 3 there.
Mm-hmm.
And who was actually so nasty that it was like he was unhuman. he said he was essentially, he gave us a name, he gave us like a year, and he said, essentially, he said this person he was mentally challenged, he said, but he also was a sociopath. He said, so he lacked the ability to know right from wrong in some senses, but in the other sense, he really didn't care either. He said he was the guy who killed the neighborhood animals for fun. He said who absolutely was responsible for the death of other people. He said he was just a very nasty, manipulative man who, when he died, he couldn't bring himself to face what he had done. He said, when you pass, you have to face everything you've done. He said he can't do that. He refuses to do that because he knows what will happen. So this is where he resides.
Okay, he's too aware of what acceptance means. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
So, and I said to him, well, how does this make sense? I said, everything that I said, my son, the way and he said, oh no, he said, that's him. He said, he absolutely has the ability to possess him. He said, he may be human. He said, but he's not full. He said, he is the worst type of spirit he said you can have. He said he almost is unhuman. He said if I can think of a demonic demeanor, this would be this man.
Yeah, I mean, without being a demon, this is it. He just has one more step to become that thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he has one more step, and he
like
is that fucking demon.
That would be it.
No. And that's and that is what I was being warned about, was that there's something very strong, very manipulative. Because I consider myself an empath, and I can feel things. And sometimes it's like, you tell me how it's going to be. And I believe that I was being warned not to go to your house for a major reason.
I believe it.
As much as I hated, and I told you that too. I was like, I've been told not to go there, so I'm just not going to.
Mm-hmm.
But, because I just knew how intense and how serious this was. Shoot.
I mean, it definitely, I didn't think it was going to end the way it did. Like, with such a big, when they originally came and said, it's just the previous owner, it's basically just a friendly ghost. Yeah. I never in a million years would have thought a year later that this would have finally been the answer we got.
So, I mean, not to say that their information was wrong, it just was not complete. Okay, it was wrong in the sense that this is a friendly ghost, but, it was,
well,
it's just
according to, because I had mentioned that to them, I said, we've been told it's this, this, and this, and he basically said, oh yeah, he said, the little girl, he said, I know your son has talked about a little girl, he said, I can feel it, he said, I know that, He said, in your bathroom, I said, yeah, he said, that was him. He said, don't you think, he said, what's easier to attract a child? He said, an overgrown sized man or a child.
Or another child.
He said, your son has seen children. Yep. He said, your son has seen children. Your son has seen other men and women. He said, and every single one of them has been him. He said, other mediums. He said, I know you've had others here. He said, because I can read the mind of this man. He's like, I can see pictures in my head of what he thinks, what he does, what he says. Mm. He said, and what they told you, he said, was it true? No. He said, but is it what they truly believed? Because that's what
that's what we're being told.
Allowed to see, basically. He said, absolutely.
Yeah.
He said, it's basically like a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
So,
which is mega, which is
spirit was just portraying that he was all of these other people for over a year. Yeah. And we really didn't know any different. So we all sat down, he said to my son, he said, can you draw a picture of the bad ghost? Because he said he didn't want to just come out and say to him, is this what it looks like? He said, I want to see what he comes up with.
Yeah, of course.
And I said to him, I said, well, my son's only 3. I said, and I've been working on circles with him. I said, so I'm not so sure how far you're going to get with a facial picture. I said, but by all means, go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah.
And it was actually the first time my 3-year-old drew a circle, a perfect circle, and he drew a picture of this face that was just, it was black and it was bright red. For whatever reasons he chose those colors, those are the colors he said that the man's face was. And it was frightening.
Do you have a picture of
and
this?
I believe I still do. I will send you that as well.
Excellent.
And the guy said, yeah. He said, that's your bad ghost. And he continued to walk around the house, and in the bedroom I had a dry erase board. And my son used to always, he would practice drawing shapes on it and letters and numbers. And right before we left for vacation, my son was drawing on it. I didn't take notice to what he drew on it. So the man stopped and he looked and he said, who drew this? I said, oh, well, my son did. And he just looked at it for a little bit. He went into my son's bedroom, which the window had a view of the backyard, and he looked in the backyard. And he came back in and he looked at the dry erase board. He said, do you even know what this is? I said, no, not particularly. No, they just kind of looked like squares, kind of, to me. And he grabbed the dry erase board, went over, looked out the window, and in the backyard there was a huge rock, a couple feet long by a couple feet wide in the ground. It was kind of like looked like concrete almost, but it was like a rock. And I had tried to find the bottom of it. I tried everything to get rid of it, and I could never find the bottom of it. So instead of fighting with it, I just made a flower garden around it. And he said to me, he said, this is that rock. I said, okay. He said, do you see the 3 painted rocks that your son made on top of it? I said, yeah. I said, we painted them last year. My son wanted to put them on that rock. And he said, okay, now do you see the 3 square circle shapes right here on top of the big one? I said, yeah. I said, so I guess what? Is that big rock with the 3 rocks on it? He said, exactly. And over a little bit down, he said, now do you see what this is? I said, well, it looks like a stick figure. I said, it looks like a person. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, it is. And I said, okay. And he calls my son over and he says, where is this? He said, is this a person? My son said, yeah. And he said, well, why is it over here? He said, why did you draw it here? And my son said, well, he's underneath that, and pointed at the big rock. And the guy looked at me and I looked at him and I'm like, are you kidding me? How much worse can it get,
Time to get the shovel.
They said that there is actually they believe sometime in the 1800s when this man in the home was from that time period, that they felt like there was a child's body underneath that big rock somewhere because of the hands of that manipulative spirit.
So yeah. Did you ever check? Did you ever?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
I mean, right? Because once you find something, the police have to be involved, right? It becomes a whole thing if you actually find bones on your property. Human remains, that is.
Don't know if it is true, if it is not true.
And you guys have moved, right?
Never...
You guys have moved.
Yes.
Oh,
I was never told that by any other medium. I was never told that by any other paranormal team. So I didn't know if it was something that was believable.
Yeah.
Or something that was just made up.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, there's no way to find out. I mean, I don't know.
I wasn't about
you weren't about
try
doing
to find
it.
out.
Yeah. You know what? Oh, am I just a crazy psycho person? I would have, I don't know. I think I would have. I've been like.
At one point of me wanted to know.
Of course,
just
right?
to know if it was true.
And the other part of you is like, you know what? For the love of God, enough has happened. Do not touch that stone.
God forbid there is.
Yeah.
It opens a whole new can of worms.
Box of poo.
It disrupts an entire
grave. Unless
and I just wasn't comfortable being responsible for that.
Yes. I was about to say it's about responsibility, right? Because you're either doing the right thing, which is being like, hey, this is a grave, and now it's come to light that this is a grave, or now you have disturbed this grave, and then Oh yeah. No, I mean
that also comes with some consequences, I would think. So
I would think that any of it totally comes. I mean, either way, whether spiritual consequences, there are real consequences of finding bones in your back frickin' yard that are human.
Yep.
Oh. Okay. Yeah.
So that was one thing I never. Till this day, it still doesn't make sense to me. It was never brought up before.
Yeah.
My son doesn't really... I've asked him about it since.
You've asked him about it?
I figured that was my best shot.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I mean, it's definitely a good thing, but when we first moved, he would ask a lot if there were ghosts at our new house, if there were anything, and we would assure him no. And then little by little, as time passed, he kind of just started forgetting pieces of the puzzle. He'll see, once in a while, he'll hear somebody talk about it, and he'll ask what we're talking about. And I'll say to him, well, do you remember? And he doesn't remember. He doesn't remember ever saying it. He doesn't remember doing it. He doesn't remember experiencing it. So I don't know. It's almost as if as soon as we left that house and closed the door, the entire thing just closed the door for him. And I don't know if it's because he was only 3 and 4 when he experienced it, so with age he'll forget it, or if it's new surrounding. I don't know what it is.
Well, I mean...
But he just...
For whatever reason, when you guys left
forget
the
bits
house...
and pieces, thank God.
Yeah. And so as of now, as of this present moment, he doesn't talk about seeing people that aren't there, doesn't talk about hearing things.
Nope.
It seemed to have settled down since you've made the move.
Yeah, and we were concerned because the home that I ultimately ended up moving in with my boyfriend.
Yeah.
And his house is a block away from a cemetery.
Oh, well.
And it I wondered, like, if my son's tormented by this, will that affect him?
Yeah, if he's can tap into this, is it good to be next to
is it even
the city?
does it even make sense to do that?
Yeah.
So the original medium from the original paranormal team told us that absolutely not. She said it'll cause nothing but problems for your son. You're safer in this home, blah, 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 blah.
I don't know about that, though.
And
I mean, still.
Then, yeah, I know. So when I had asked the second team that came in, the man that gave us all this information, he said, you're not good here. He said, that's for damn sure.
Yeah.
He said, it can't get much worse. He said, it can absolutely get worse. He said, but you're top notch and pretty well here.
Yeah, it's like this
he said, but think about it. He said, I go to cemeteries, he said, to clear my head. He said, it's quiet for people like me. He said, when you pass, he said, you don't want to hang out where your body is most of the time.
Exactly.
He said, you want to go where you were happy, where you had the best memories. He said, you would be fine there.
Yeah. Cemetery isn't really, quote unquote, that bad. Sure, there are things happening at the cemetery, no question about it, right? But that's normally not the hangout spot,
Yeah. And the activity really couldn't get much worse than it was within the four walls we lived in.
Yeah, because that's pretty intense,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So ultimately, that's what we decided. We moved in with my mom for a little bit, and then we just decided that we selling the house and never looking back.
Haven't looked back.
So that's exactly what we did.
And it sounds like it was the best possible thing. I mean,
yeah.
We don't have a crystal ball.
Whatever is there is still, it wasn't happy that we left. Every time my son has not been back since the night we left. I refused to take him back.
Yeah.
When we were actually leaving that night in the car, he begged me to never take him back to that house or the town.
Ooh.
So he has never been back to that town, to that house, nothing. And when I would go, my boyfriend and I, to pack up my stuff and move stuff out, we would always. It was full top-notch activity every single time we went. Things would bang, things would fly off the wall. We'd be in the basement. You would hear somebody running across the floor upstairs. The basement door would slam shut. It just was
the classic stuff.
You think it'd be happy that I was leaving?
No.
You can do whatever you want now, but nope, it was not happy.
It was throwing a fit.
So,
yeah.
But thank God ever since, because ultimately that's what the whole thing was about, my son's safety, happiness, and he is good, so.
Well, thank God. Thank God your son is in a better place, that you and your whole family are physically in a better place, mentally in a better place, and sounds like spiritually in a better place.
Yes.
Because even though this is hell. What you've been through is nothing short of hell. And definitely a trial of strength and love and light. And it sounds like you guys have at least come through the other side of one journey now. Life always throws so much at you, even the other side throws things at you too. Now to have all of it go on at the same time is pretty wild. And I don't know about you, Julie, but I would consider you guys are warriors. You know that? certainly survivors and warriors of.
Yeah, at the time it didn't feel very good. You definitely don't, when it's happening, you don't. I felt anything but strong. I felt there were so many times where I just cried and felt defeated and was ready to give up because it's mentally and physically exhausting.
Oh, and what can you do? You know?
Yeah.
And well, at least that's a feeling.
You're fighting a battle that you really cannot fight.
Because there's no clear answer. There's no clear answer.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, I bet you think about things and there are still questions to the puzzle. Not to say that you need to answer them, but I'm sure you still are loaded with questions. I mean,
oh yeah,
you know, maybe better left.
I still have a lot. I've just I've come to the conclusion that we went through it. We made it out. Thank God. And any unanswered questions, I just have to live with. It's not worth digging it back up to find answers that I may not in the long run want.
Now, as far as this entity goes, you still believe that it is at that house? Like, this sucker is stuck there?
We were told when we had asked, they said, you can absolutely, they said, you can stay in your home. They said, you can fight, and we feel like eventually you could win that battle. They said, but the strength, the manipulation, the pure evil and hatred that this spirit carries with it, they said it's going to be the biggest battle you could ever imagine facing in your life. They said, so ultimately, the decision is yours. And I said to them, I said, there is an option where I can leave and I can move into my boyfriend's house. And they just looked at me and they said, if you have an option, do it. They said, if you do not need to stay here, don't.
Yeah. Unless you're looking for a battle for potentially the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because there is a theory, too, that... I was just about to say, sometimes things fade, but, it was something that strong, and, this is not your... If there is a typical entity, this is an atypical entity, Yeah.
It definitely wasn't typical, normal, every day. It was something much worse.
Yeah.
And in just a short couple... it took a year to get to that point. But the deterioration of my son within a couple short weeks, there was no way that I could have stayed in that house and risked
his health and
him deteriorating worse and worse just for a battle I'm not guaranteed to win.
Yeah.
So...
And this only lasted a year. Sometimes lasts years for people. Years. Obviously, yeah.
Well, when I did start, picking their brains and talking to them and stuff, we concluded that it has been there the entire time I owned the home. All of the things that I had experienced, all of the everything from when I moved in there, I was only 22.
Yeah.
I bought a cute little house. I had a full-time job. I went out all the time, and little by little, I kind of just faded into an everyday wake up, go to sleep, super depressive, just kind of like a robot. I had a lot of anger issues. I had a lot of different issues. And in speaking to them and hearing what they had to say and hearing what I had to say, and then since moving, ultimately, I realized it was the home. It wasn't even me as a person. So I had asked them what would happen, and they made it very clear that it's just going to stay there. It's not going to leave. So it's attached to the property.
Yeah.
And that just is how it is.
Well, Julie, I'm so glad that you and your family are out of that house.
Thank you. So am I.
What a scary journey, but a journey that I'm glad it sounds like you guys have come out victorious. Of course, we'll stay in touch. I'm really hoping and I'm praying, and it seems like the saga with that entity at that house is over. As far as your son goes, who knows? He might go later in life, and then if he has a gift, if he chooses to stick with it, these are all things we learn. We unlearn things too. The more we need to learn about the real world, the more we need to unlearn about the weird things that we picked up on as children.
Yeah.
Because I think as children, we're all definitely more in tune because we're so raw. Unless you've been
absolutely.
told no, it's still possible.
Yeah, you don't know any better. You still have all that innocence.
So to me, it's like you don't know any better. You might know a lot more. In a weird flip of a coin. It's so weird, right? Reality is such a strange mystery.
It's extremely strange.
Ooh, it's strange. What a strange world we live in. Man, Julie, this has been fascinating. I mean, when you first got in touch with me back in 2019, you were some. I think you were a couple months in, or at least a month or two into what was going on, and we would be in touch, and some of when you were telling me the story again, I was remembering us talking about these things, and me telling you, you just got to be a beacon of light and love for your family. Do not let whatever's happened. I mean, as hard as that is to hear and follow through with, you just can't let it, win and beat you down. And
ultimately that's how you end up winning it.
I mean, that's the only way. I mean, and when you're in it, it's bad. Now, oh man, I'm so glad you guys. Yeah, it just sounds like you found the light at the end of a tunnel. You're in a new house. I'm sure you guys have made it super comfy and cozy.
Yes, much better.
Good.
Much better, much happier, much everything.
Good. Now, I was hearing you talk, and I believe you're probably talking to your son, right? All the time.
Yeah, he just came out.
Okay. Well, I hope he's happy. He's having a great time at the new house. I'm really good.
He is. He's much happier now.
That's good. I think that's so interesting too. And I feel like that's somewhat typical of the memory fading. I feel like probably though in the back, it's there. I don't know. Minds are so strange. Minds are this.
They are. They're such a complex, strange thing.
The whole world's strange. Stranger than fiction, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Because I'm sure you. I don't know. But hey, Julie, this has been fascinating. We've been talking for a while now. I've been really keeping track of time, probably over an hour at this point.
Yeah, I think so.
Now I would love to get whatever video, whatever photos you want to send to me with a description, and maybe we'll do another recording where we talk about specific photos, or whatever you have. As of right now, I think we have a lot of stuff just for one episode with you, sure. minus all these photos and stuff. That could probably be a whole other thing. But I would love to do that. I know it's getting late, and you've got the little guy with you right now.
Yeah.
But thank you yet again. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, you're welcome.
With me.
Thank you.
But yeah, as of right now, I'm gonna stop the recording. So let me just do my little, ladies and gentlemen, This has been another episode of Dead Until Dusk Paranormal. I was joined tonight with Julie, and I was your host, Connor, and I hope everybody has had a good time. Turn on that light, change your PJs, because that's part of the story.